Okay, we are live. Welcome back, everybody. If you are watching us live, it's lovely to have you here with us on this beautiful day in the southern part of the UK where Yvonne and I are. This is the third episode for us, and I'm here again, Lee Norris, with Yvonne Thompson. Yvonne, say hi.
Hi, everyone. Good to be back.
Good to be back. And in today, episode 3, this is our third one. And we've decided that we're going to have a talk about the accountability model and how it came about. Maybe we should just start with that question, Yvonne, and let you talk about it.
Yeah. I love being able to go. It's been so long since I've reviewed some of the history of the company and how we got started and how some of the things evolved. And one of the most important things that evolved through our work was the accountability model. We still use it today. And it was developed, 12 years ago. And got integrated into our leadership work, all the leadership work we do. And it started really slowly, but mainly it started, I went back to school to do my master's, and specifically around leadership and training. And I kind of came back a changed person. Masters often do that to people, especially if you go to the right school and where it's really a sort of a hands-on and applied learning, and where you get to actually try things on.
Mm-hmm.
And about a year after I graduated, and I had written my first book, so I just finished the first book, Leadership for a New World. And I look back now and I think, I wish I could take it off my list of things I did. But it was a good starting place. It was a good grounding place for me. And it was a good opportunity to sort of start thinking about how do I take what's up here and put it into a format that people could access more readily. And then I had a family member who went through a really, really significant mental health challenge. And it really affected our family. And it really turned my world upside down. And so people who have had to deal with loved ones, people they're really close to that are suicidal, there's no words. There's no words to describe what happens to you. And it was all around us. It infiltrated everything in our family, in our life, with our kids, and it infiltrated everything. And as a result of that, I spiraled in a not a good direction for probably a year, maybe 8 months for sure, to the point where it affects everything else around you, right? So your brain's not functioning properly. And it's a perfect example of how, the threat response was on high alert all the time. So you're not, the PFC isn't working at all, or, only working when you really had to call on it. But most of the time I was in threat response. And as a result, that changes everything. And it changes all the chemistry in your body. It changes the way your brain functions. It changes your relationships. My marriage started to become really problematic, and because we couldn't agree on anything, and we couldn't, and I was trying desperately to change this situation that I was experiencing. And so it's really interesting because it fundamentally changed me as a human being. And it came to a pinnacle point in my life where I either had to surrender. I had to really surrender to the fact that I still had a marriage. I still had my kids. I had to surrender to the fact that I had loved ones around me. And it was actually really interesting. We were in a therapy session, a family therapy session, so everybody's there. And we'd had a few of them. And I realized in that moment, just our experience, please, don't read anything into this about therapy. Therapy is great and very helpful. So it's not a negative. But I realized that we couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't do it anymore because we would spend a lot of time talking about this person and what was happening. And we weren't actually making progress. We were just sort of sharing our feelings. And there was a moment in time that I write about it in my second book, that I, I realized how suicidal this person was, and I was so desperate. I was so desperate. And there was a couple of things said to me that were just, things like, you may have to get used to the fact that you've lost this person already. And that, to hear that, it still wells in me, right?
Yeah.
And I stood up from that last group therapy thing and went, I'm never coming back. I need to find a way to move through this. I need to find a way to manage this. And so I just literally made a decision that I was going to surrender, that it wasn't mine, that it was someone else's, that my only job was to love this person. It wasn't to change them. It wasn't to try to fix. It wasn't to be the rescuer. I'd been trying to rescue for 8 or 9 months. And I had to make the decision that I was going to stand tall and sovereign and keep the healthy relationships that were about to be unhealthy, to hold on to those healthy relationships in any way that I could. And so I did. So I refocused my alignment. And it's funny how sometimes after a long period of time in that threat response, that how one realization, one really poignant, dramatic realization can shift things. And I shifted fairly quickly, like I would say within a very short period of time. And I became thirsty and hungry for knowledge on how do you deal with these things in life that can be so catastrophic and so traumatic, that I went searching. And I was ravenous. I mean, I read and I read and I read and I read, and I got books and I talked to people, and I started to realize that my surrender was not giving up, that my surrender was learning unconditional love, that you could love someone so deeply even though they were doing something that you really disagreed with, and that my only role was to love and not to interfere and not to try to own or rescue. And that was huge. It was absolutely huge for me. And so the accountability model and my second book came from that experience of and practice. Like I had to practice. I had to get up every morning and practice it. I had to understand what was it to detach, knowing that detachment was a sign of love. It wasn't a sign of disengagement. They're very different things. Detachment and disengagement are very different things. I didn't disengage. I didn't run and hide. I just didn't own something that wasn't mine. I didn't try to fix something that wasn't mine. So I started to explore all these concepts around acceptance and intention and detachment and allowing and surrender. And it created this roadmap for me that was so powerful. And I made decisions that I wasn't going to push boulders anymore. I wasn't going to try to change things that were outside my control. I wasn't going to try to impose my views on other people. I was going to start to really understand that voice in my head and challenge it and recognize that it wasn't me, that voice was not me. And every judgment, every negative story about another human being, that became me looking at me and saying, why? What gives you the right to judge, to have even an opinion about someone else's choices? Manage yourself, take full responsibility and accountability for how I show up in the world, what I think, what I feel, how I interact with other people. And that was my only responsibility. My responsibility was not out here. And the moment I started doing that and really practicing it, committing it to a practice, everything changed. And the accountability model came from that. And then I said, well, how can we use this and that experience and apply that in a leadership role? Because so many leaders are trying to change things that are beyond their control. And they spend hours and hours and hours trying to fix other people and trying to, fix situations. And that became a really interesting craft. And I use the word craft because, when we work with senior leaders and we talk about detachment, well, Lee, like that's like, they're like, what do you mean? I have to be attached to the results, and I have to drive results, and I have to do this, and I have to do that. And I'm like, okay, it's not about not doing, but it's about a real balance between being and doing. It's a true understanding of the difference between being and doing, and working with them in tandem, if that makes any sense. So I explored all of these concepts in my second book, which was really interesting as well, because it's not a business book. It's very personal. And yeah, and and then of course, my third book was all about how to take that stuff and apply it in a business context and in a work context. So everything that we do at Change Innovators has come from very, very real experiences. And even our faculty, I mean, this, Lee, our faculty are very much on a journey of self-exploration and that deep learning about ourselves. We can't expect anybody to do something we're not prepared to do ourselves. And so, we're all on that journey and continue to be on that journey. So yeah, the accountability model came from real, true life experience.
I think there's a few things in there that I'd like to just explore a little bit more, if that's okay. So you talked about the PFC, the prefrontal cortex of the brain, and how important that was in helping you understand what's going on in your body, in my body. When we go through experiences like the ones that you're describing, and I've had some experiences in my own life which have been testing. You can really feel that you're living in a body that is experiencing a lot of I don't even know what the right word is, but you're really experiencing almost like that being in this three-dimensional space that you sit in, that your body is the mechanism that you interact with the world. And when your body's out of alignment with itself, and that means your brain and your heart and your guts and just kind of everything can be knotted. How do I regain some element of control of my body in order to regain some element of control of myself? Because, if I've understood correctly, it is the totality of us that we're trying to manage, not just our thoughts and our feelings, but the embodied way in which we approach the world.
Well, and I think you make a really important point, because what we want to recognize and understand is it's all connected. They're not separate things, and they're not supposed to be separate things. They work in tandem. They work as an integration. They work when we're coherent, we're working in harmony, right? When we go through those really traumatic experiences in our life, we end up incoherent. And what that means is that part of us is being railroaded or hijacked. And so I think it's really interesting, right? From being someone who's worked in leadership development for a long time, before it was ever even people were even interested in it, right? What do you mean leadership? We do management training, supervisory training. I think that neuroscience gets a really bad rap now. It's like, oh, everybody's doing it. But, we don't give it a bad rap at all. We also don't believe it's the end all be all. That's not our core business at all. It's a tool. It's a scientific understanding the science behind how things integrate and work together is really important for leaders and for human beings in general. So why would we want to give something like that a bad rap? Why wouldn't we just say it's one tool, it's one piece of information, as opposed to those are the fads that drive me crazy in the leadership world, right? Like, let's talk about love. Oh, that's the big thing. Neuroscience, that's a big thing. Like, why is that? Why do we have to do that? Oh,
Yeah.
it is about integration. And so knowing that when our nervous system and our heart and our brain are all in alignment and balanced, we are in a coherent state. And
Yeah.
that's when we have optimal performance. So why wouldn't we want to understand that science? And the PFC allows us to actually say, well, why do I feel so uncomfortable? Why is my stomach rock hard? Oh, something's going on here. Why have I instantly got a headache? Why are my muscles cramping? We need to ask ourselves those questions, because that is related to stress. It's related to, can be related to all kinds of things. But our ability to ask that question, that comes from the rational, from that PFC.
And so keeping the prefrontal cortex operating, it is really important, particularly in today's world where we're knowledge workers, where we need to use our brain, where we need to use that higher order function.
Absolutely.
And yet we're really talking about how management practice, really more than anything else, still kind of switches that off if people don't reflect on the impact of the things that they do in organizations around other people.
So let's dig a little deeper into what you just said, because I think the way you said it might not have been landed with a couple people and a few people. And that is what you're referring to is that leaders can easily be hijacked and dysregulated emotionally. Something's not going right. Someone's done something wrong in their view. They've made a bad decision. We didn't get the results we wanted to get from that project. So what happens is the emotional, and I think we want to be really mindful of not implying that emotions are bad. Emotions are incredibly important as human beings. We're emotional beings that just happen to have a really good brain. We're emotional beings. So it's not about pushing emotions down. It's about understanding how emotions are affecting me. And it's about regulating them appropriately based on the situation. And if I want really good results in a leadership context, in a business context, then I need to be able to be tuned into my physical body, into my hormonal state, into my emotional regulation, in order to make sure that the PFC is online when it needs to be online, and that we're making really good decisions. So it's not about, and that's one of the things I love about our work, Lee, is we don't, there isn't the right and wrong and the good and the bad and the always and the never. Like, we don't work in that arena. We just don't do it, because the gray is where life is.
Yeah.
The gray is where all the opportunity is, all the joy is, all the curiosity is in the gray. And the question is always more important than the answer, because why? Why is the question way more important than the answer? Always. Because the question opens up everything, whereas there is no one answer to anything.
Yeah. So let's just have a little talk about, I'm going to pop it on the screen, love and compassion. This is a regular thing that comes up. And I know that you've talked about this, a lot, not just talked about it, but we've, tried to live this in the work that we do, but also how easy it is to dismiss this or to laugh it off because it doesn't feel like the language of business.
Or make it a trend.
Or making a trend, absolutely, which, absolutely, people will jump on or reject, depending upon how they're feeling, disposition may be. So can we explore this a little bit in relation to what we've just been talking about?
Yeah. So first of all, I think it's important for a little history, and that is that, if you'd asked me 22 years ago, I wanted love and compassion on our website, and, nobody would, I was absolutely not allowed to do it, right? Mainly because every piece of advice I got was, you'll be laughed at. So I didn't. I mean, I didn't. And probably for good reason. People weren't ready, and I needed to find safe ways to. We needed to find safe ways to bring it into the conversation with our teams that we work with. And that's been evolving beautifully. I mean, it was a tough grind that first 10 years, but the last 10 years, and particularly the last 5, we can be much more open and transparent about that. So when we think in terms of love and compassion, even my simple example about letting go and surrendering was grounded in love. And it was grounded in love for many ways. It was grounded in love for myself, because I needed to recover. I needed to find a way to recover and get healthy. It was grounded in love for my family, because I needed to reconnect with my family, which I hadn't been doing. It was love for the person who I'd been trying to change and fix, because it's not my place. It's their journey. And so love is a really interesting thing. It's not the love, when we talk about love in our programs and our work with the leaders we coach, we're not talking about the intimate love that happens, between couples. We are talking about, and I had someone say to me, my mentor said to me many years ago, and I've worked with, coaches and therapists and mentors, because I'm human and fallible and need lots of help myself. I said, there's this strange thing that happens in my coaching practice where I can literally feel the other person, and I know they can feel me, and I can see how things will just very gently, and almost, if you're not really present, you'll miss it. There's a shift in the other person. And my mentor said, when you, and I know you and I have talked about this, Lee, when you are able to show your love to another person, it's not about me. What it does is it helps the other person see their own love within themselves. So that's an interesting concept. It's not about me, and I'm not giving them something. I'm staying over here on my side in my love. So if my only focus is the success of the other person, and to hold that space for them, nothing else, no other agenda, no judgments, no, it's not my place to have a judge. Like that's a big thing to learn. That's not my place to have a judgment about anybody else. Even myself, I have to really be mindful of the judgments I have about myself. But when I can show my love, what it does is it sort of holds up a mirror for the other person to see the love within themselves. And all of a sudden you can feel a softening of the energy, a softening of the conversation that then gives that person permission. They give themselves permission to access that. And that changes everything. Because they can begin to be kind to themselves. They can begin to be more reflective of who they are and who they want to be. So that's an interesting, that in when we're facilitating, it happens both in groups and it happens in one-on-one coaching. Absolutely. I've seen it. I've seen it happen even in groups. And that's the exchange of energy. That's the exchange of energy that takes place between either two people or a group of people. And we know through the work of the HeartMath Institute and all of their studies that this is real. That coherence can happen amongst people. The question is, am I willing to be, to hold that space, that safe space for another person, and let them see it. So love and compassion are not about, it is not about, compassion meaning we have to give everybody what they want in a work context. That's ridiculous. Businesses generate revenue and capital for a reason, and it's they can employ more people, they can do good in the world. I mean, there's a lot, this isn't about, anti-capitalism. Absolutely not. It's not about that at all. It's the opposite. It's about healthy capitalism and our ability to, managing performance and working with people to help them see for themselves where, every single underperformer knows they're underperforming almost in every case. They just can't articulate it easily. And it's not because they've chose it. People don't get up and say, well, today I'm going to go to work and make everybody's life miserable. Nobody does that. We're not designed that way as humans. So when we can create that really safe space as a leader, we can start making connections with the people on our teams. We can start making unique human connections with each person that we work with and create a space for really high performance.
I think that that this work that we do, and the leadership programs, but in particular New World Leadership, is the kind of it's the manifestation of what you are talking about now. It helps people to step into the journey and for it to become more practical. What I also realize is that when people in positions start to shift, that what happens in others can be quite interesting, because the expectations of others can still be, why don't you just tell me what to do? Why don't you take on all the accountability and responsibility for me? Because that way, when it all goes wrong, I can still blame you. That kind of thing. Where
we never see that, right?
We never see that, of course. But it's so what stepping into this space needs is a letting go, in that same way that you talked about a letting go, and allowing people to kind of inhabit their own space.
Right. So that's a really good place for us to kind of wrap today, and then maybe pick up that. So how do we move the accountability and responsibility from the leadership side of the desk to where it actually belongs, which is the other side of the desk?
Absolutely.
How do we create an environment? We have a really clear saying in all of our work. A leader's primary responsibility above everything else, a leader's primary responsibility is to create an environment where each and every contributor wants and does take full responsibility and accountability for the results and actions of themselves. That's the leader's job, to create that environment where that can flourish. And that's not the environment that most leaders create. Most managers create an environment that is not grounded in that. So if that becomes the core of everything we've been doing for the last 23 years, there's a reason why it works and why it creates incredible success for so many, leaders. But I think what we could do next time is pick it up from there. Is how do you do that, and what is that about? And that's really intrinsic to the accountability model.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's wrap it up there. We've been talking about New World Leadership. We've been talking about the accountability model, and Yvonne's journey towards building change innovators. And we're certainly a team now doing this.
Oh my goodness.
Globally.
We have a great team. We've always had a team, but it is great having you on the team.
Yeah, well, it's wonderful to be part of it. And and I think what we'll do next time, as you say, we'll pick up from this to try and, make it even more, make it even easier for people to lean into and understand what we're talking about. So we'll see you next time. And thank you if you've joined us live, and if you're watching this back on our YouTube channel or Spotify channel or wherever it ends up, then thank you so much, and we'll look forward to seeing you again in the next episode. See you soon. Bye.